Welcome to my channel, HFY Tales. Everyone knew her as Mira, the girl who spoke softly, dressed plainly, and avoided eye contact. Professors forgot her name, classmates forgot her face. She moved through campus like background noise, invisible and harmless. But late one night, when a security guard disappeared near the old biology wing, Mira stood alone under the flickering lights, her shoes spotless, her pulse calm. She checked her phone once, then erased a message before anyone could see it. Mira had learned early that silence was a kind of camouflage. On a campus filled with loud ambition, colorful personalities, and constant noise, being quiet made people uncomfortable and then bored. They stopped looking. That was the point. She sat in the last seat of every lecture hall, always near an exit, always where shadows pooled when the lights dimmed. She took notes neatly, never raised her hand, and turned in flawless assignments that earned high grades without drawing attention. To most students, she was that girl who's always alone. To Mira, that anonymity was survival. Her dorm room was small and undecorated, stripped of anything personal. No photos, no posters, no safeguards. Just a bed made with military precision, a desk, a laptop, and a locked drawer no one had ever seen open. Her roommate transferred out after 2 weeks, complaining that Mira felt like a ghost. The housing office reassigned no one else. Mira hadn't requested it, but she appreciated the quiet. During the day, she followed predictable routines. Coffee at 7:10 a.m., black, no sugar. Classes, library, dinner before the crowds. Back to her room by 9. She memorized faces without staring, mapped habits without seeming curious. Who walked alone? Who drank too much? Who watched people instead of talking to them? Patterns were everywhere if you knew how to see them. Most people didn't. That was why no one noticed when she stayed late on campus that night. The old biology wing had been scheduled for demolition for years, its upper floors sealed, and its hallways half swallowed by dust and neglect. Students avoided it instinctively. Even campus security treated it like dead ground. Quick patrols, flashlights, never lingering too long. That made it useful. Mira exited her last study session just after midnight, hoodie pulled up, backpack light. The air was cold enough to sting her lungs, grounding her in the present. She didn't rush. Rushing drew attention. She walked with the same unremarkable pace she used every day, turning corners only when she was sure no one was behind her. The security guard was already there. He leaned against the railing near the service entrance, scrolling on his phone, bored and careless. New hire. She noted him 3 weeks ago. Same route every night. Same pause in the same place. He looked up when he heard her footsteps and smiled, the kind that tried to seem friendly and failed. Library's closed, he said. I know, Mira replied softly, eyes down, shoulders slightly rounded. Vulnerable. Forgettable. He stepped closer, just a little too close. Asked her name. Asked where she was headed. Mira answered with partial truths, her voice steady but unsure, letting him believe he had control of the conversation. When his hand reached for her arm, she sighed, not in fear, but in disappointment. What happened next took less than 4 seconds. By the time the phone hit the concrete, the guard was gone. No straged, no noise, no blood. Mira stood alone under the flickering lights, adjusting her sleeve where his fingers had brushed her skin. Her breathing slowed naturally, the way it always did after exertion. She scanned the area once, confirming what she already knew. Empty, unwatched, safe. Her shoes were spotless. She retrieved her phone and unlocked it, eyes flicking over a message that had arrived minutes earlier. Just coordinates and a timestamp. No name. No greeting. She typed a single word in response, done, then paused. After a moment's consideration, she deleted the sent message, then wiped the draft history entirely. Habit mattered. Complacency killed. As she walked away from the biology wing, she became Mira again. Quiet, slight, invisible. The next morning, the campus buzzed with confusion. A security guard hadn't shown up for his shift. His supervisor blamed a hangover, then a missed alarm. By afternoon, concern crept in. By evening, the word missing was whispered between students like a dare. Mira sat in her psychology lecture, pen moving smoothly across the page. She didn't look up when the professor mentioned the incident, didn't react when a girl too rose ahead, gasped, and covered her mouth. Mira already knew where the guard was. She knew he wouldn't be found. She also knew this wouldn't be the last time. When class ended, students clustered in anxious groups, speculating wildly. Some joked nervously. Some looked over their shoulders. Mira slipped past them, unnoticed as always, her reflection briefly catching in the glass doors. Plain face, neutral eyes, nothing sharp enough to remember. But deep inside, something had shifted. The pattern was accelerating. And Mira, the quiet girl no one ever really saw, was already preparing for what came next. Expend Part 2 in 1,000 words. Without headings, the rumors didn't arrive all at once. They crept in slowly, like dampness seeping through walls no one bothered to inspect. At first, it was just whispers in hallways and half-jokes, traded over cafeteria tables. People noticed a pattern before they admitted it to themselves. The missing students weren't random. They were names that carried weight in quiet ways. People who had been reported, accused, settled out of court, or protected by influence. People who knew how to hide behind clean records and louder reputations. Mira heard everything. She sat 2 tables away, head bent over her phone, thumbs still, eyes unfocused, listening without appearing to listen. Her classmates spoke freely around her because no one ever assumed she mattered. That was the advantage of being forgettable. You became invisible to guilt, invisible to fear, invisible to suspicion. "Did you hear about that guy from the finance department?" Someone whispered. "Yeah, the one who got expelled rumors last year. He's gone. Just gone." Mira didn't react. She stirred her coffee once, counted 3 rotations, and stood to leave at the same time she always did. Predictability calmed people. It made them stop asking questions. But beneath the surface of campus life, tension was tightening. Security patrols doubled. Email alerts went out, full of hollow reassurance and vague promises. Posters appeared on bulletin boards, faces smiling in photos that no longer matched reality. Mira studied each one carefully as she passed, committing details to memory. Height, build, eyes. She already knew the rest. That night, she didn't return to her dorm. The library basement was officially restricted after midnight, but rules only mattered if you didn't know how to step around them. Mira waited until the last student left, then slipped through a staff-only stairwell and descended into the quiet beneath the building. The air changed as she went down. Cooler, heavier, carrying the scent of dust and old paper. Cameras existed, but they were relics, blind in more ways than one. At the far end of the basement, hidden behind shelves no one touched anymore, was a plain metal door. No label, no handed, just a fingerprint scanner disguised as a rusted plate. Mira pressed her thumb to it. The door opened. Inside, the room was nothing like her dorm. The walls were covered. Maps, photographs, handwritten notes layered over one another like scars. Names were pinned in careful rows, connected by red string that formed a web too complex to understand at a glance. Dates were written beneath each photo, some crossed out, others circled. A few names were marked with symbols only Mira seemed to understand. She shrugged off her backpack and moved with purpose now. No hesitation, no softness. The quiet girl vanished the moment the door closed behind her. She approached the center wall, where the newest edition waited. A photograph printed that morning. The ink was still fresh. She traced the edge of it with her finger, eyes narrowing as she reviewed the details again. Every movement, every habit, every secret weakness had already been logged. There was no uncertainty left. Still, something bothered her. She reached up and brushed her hair aside, exposing the faint scar behind her ear. Old, thin, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. It pulsed slightly, not with pain, but with memory. She ignored it, as she always did, and turned back to the wall. That was when she heard it. A sound that didn't belong. A footstep. Mira froze, not in fear, but in calculation. The room went silent except for her breathing, which she slowed deliberately. She listened again. Another step. Careful. Curious. too light to be security. Someone had followed her. She moved without panic, slipping the backpack back over her shoulder and stepping into the shadows near the door. Her hand brushed the wall, finding a switch that killed the overhead lights instantly. Darkness swallowed the room. The footsteps stopped. She could hear the person's breathing now, shallow and excited. Whoever was thought they'd found something. Thought they were ahead of the story. Mira almost smiled. A faint glow appeared as a phone screen lit up, sweeping the darkness. The beam passed over the walls, over the web of names and dates, lingering just long enough for comprehension to dawn. "Oh my God," a voice whispered. Mira stepped into the light. The man startled so violently he nearly dropped his phone. He was taller than her, lean, eyes bright with the thrill of discovery. She recognized him immediately. Aaron, journalism major, observant, persistent, the kind of person who believed truth was always worth the cost. "You shouldn't be here," Mira said quietly. He stared at her, then laughed once, breathless. "I knew it," he said. "I knew there was something wrong about you. You disappear when people vanish. You're always nearby." "Being nearby doesn't mean being responsible," she replied. He gestured wildly at the walls. "This does." Mira studied him the way a hunter studies unexpected prey, without anger, without rush. He wasn't supposed to be here. He was on a list. "Not yet. Are you going to kill me?" Aaron asked, half expecting it, half daring her. Mira tilted her head slightly. "That depends." "On what?" She stepped closer, close enough that he had to lean back. Her eyes were steady, emotionless, ancient in a way that didn't belong to someone her age. "On whether you're hunting a story," she said softly, "or whether you're part of the problem." Before he could answer, a sudden blare tore through the basement. Alarms. Red lights flashing to life, bathing the walls in warning colors. Doors slammed shut automatically, metal locks engaging with a final, echoing click. Aaron's face drained of color. "What did you do?" Mira didn't look at him. She was listening to the alarms, to the timing, to the unfamiliar rhythm beneath it all. Someone else had activated the system. And for the first time in a very long while, Mira realized she might not be alone in the hunt. Expend Part 3 in 1,000 words without headings. The alarms didn't scream like emergencies. They pulsed, measured, controlled, too precise to be accidental. Mira felt it immediately, the subtle wrongness in the timing. This wasn't campus security. This was someone who understood systems. Aaron backed away from her, eyes darting to the sealed doors, to the red lights washing over the walls. "You set this up," he said, forcing accusation into his voice to keep the fear from cracking through. "This is some kind of trap." "If it were," Mira replied calmly, "you'd already be unconscious." That unsettled him more than the alarms. She crossed the room, moving past him without concern, and knelt near the base of the far wall. With practiced fingers, she pressed a sequence into a hidden panel. Nothing happened. Her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Okay," Aaron said, breathing faster now. "So you didn't plan this." Mira stood slowly. "Someone else is here." The realization hit him hard. "Another one of you?" "There is no you," she said. "There is only necessity." The lights flickered. The alarms dropped in volume, shifting into a low, continuous hum that vibrated through the floor. Mira closed her eyes for half a second, listening, not just to sound, but to absence. Cameras were still dead. No footsteps. No radio chatter. Whoever had triggered the lockdown wasn't nearby. "You don't understand what you're involved in," Aaron said, his journalist instincts fighting his survival instincts. "People are disappearing. Someone needs to tell this story." Mira turned to him, then really looked at him, not as a variable, as a person. "Stories are luxuries," she said. "They come after safety. You decide what safety looks like," he shot back. "Yes." The simplicity of the answer scared him more than arrogance would have. She moved again, this time to a narrow service hatch behind one of the shelving units. She pried it open with bare hands, muscles tightening beneath her sleeves. Inside was a maintenance crawl space, barely wide enough for a person to pass through. "This leads out," she said. "Eventually." "And you?" Aaron asked. "I'm not leaving." The hum deepened. Somewhere above them, something heavy shifted. Aaron hesitated. "They'll find you." Mira met his eyes. "They already have." The words settled like a blade between them. Before he could respond, the air changed, pressure shifting, subtle but unmistakable. Mira reacted instantly, grabbing Aaron's collar and yanking him sideways as something slammed into the spot where he'd been standing. Concrete exploded. Dust filled the room. Aaron hit the ground hard, gasping. Mira was already moving. A figure dropped through the shattered ceiling, landing in a crouch with inhuman precision. Black clothing, masked face, no insignia, no motion. The intruder rose slowly. Mira felt something she hadn't felt in years. Recognition. They circled each other in silence. The hum of the alarms the only sound. Aaron scrambled backward, heart hammering, trying to make himself invisible the way Mira always did. But invisibility wasn't a skill you learned in a moment. "You're early," Mira said. The masked figure tilted their head. A voice came through a modulator, distorted but deliberate. "You're sloppy." That stung. "I adapted," Mira replied. The environment changed. So did the rules. The figure moved first. Mira met them halfway. What followed wasn't a fight. It was a conversation written in motion. Every strike tested, every block probing for weakness. They knew each other's rhythms, anticipated feints before they formed. It was like watching two mirrors collide. Aaron could barely follow it. They crashed into the map-covered wall, red strings snapping, photographs tearing loose and fluttering to the floor like fallen leaves. Mira caught a glimpse of a name she hadn't crossed out yet. The intruder saw it too. "You're hesitating," the voice said, even as they grappled. "I'm evolving." That's what they all say before they fail. Mira twisted free, landing back on her feet. Her breathing was steady, but her mind wasn't. This wasn't supposed to happen. There weren't supposed to be others operating independently. The network had been dismantled years ago. She had made sure of it. Hadn't she? A sudden crack echoed through the room. A gunshot. Both combatants froze. Aaron stood near the crawl space, hands shaking, a small pistol clutched in his grip. Smoke curled from the barrel. He stared at it like it had betrayed him. I didn't mean," he stammered. The intruder turned toward him. Mira didn't think. She moved. She struck fast, brutally, driving the intruder back with everything she had. The figure stumbled, recovered, then retreated toward the broken ceiling. "This isn't over," the voice said. "You can't protect them forever." The figure vanished upward, gone as suddenly as they'd arrived. The alarms died. Silence rushed in, heavy and absolute. Aaron sank to his knees, the gun slipping from his fingers. "What was that?" he whispered. Mira looked at the ruined wall, at the exposed names, at the truth no longer hidden. "A reminder," she said quietly, "that the hunt isn't just mine anymore." As distant sirens began to rise above ground, Mira realized something else, something far worse. Aaron wasn't on the list, but now he was part of the war. Expend Part 4 in 1,000 words without headings by morning. The campus had returned to its usual rhythm, but it carried a subtle undertone of tension. Students hurried between classes, still talking in hushed tones about the blackout in the library basement, but none had seen anything unusual. Maintenance crews claimed a power fluctuation caused the alarms, and the administration reassured everyone that the building was safe. Nobody questioned the explanation too deeply. People preferred convenient lies to uncomfortable truths. Mira walked among them, blending in perfectly, her hoodie drawn up as usual, eyes calm, hands tucked in her pockets. To anyone looking at her, she was nothing more than the quiet girl who always kept to herself. But inside, the gears of her mind were turning at a speed no one could perceive. Her first stop was her dorm room. She didn't need to check the wall or the maps again. She already knew which names were in danger, which patterns were breaking, and which threats were escalating. Still, she went through the ritual of unlocking her drawer and verifying the encrypted files stored inside her laptop. The files contained detailed histories, surveillance notes, and behavioral analyses of everyone on campus who posed a risk, people who had escaped justice before. She added the new information from last night, integrating Aaron's unintentional involvement. His actions had been reckless, but he wasn't useless. There was potential in him, she decided. Potential to be useful if he survived the next phase. The morning sun streamed through her small window, casting a harsh light across the room, illuminating nothing of significance to an outsider. Mira set her laptop aside and moved to her desk, brushing her fingers over the cold surface. Every movement was deliberate, measured. Every sound she made was intentional or suppressed. The quiet girl on campus was a facade, and it worked because nobody wanted to see the truth. People couldn't handle the weight of a predator who didn't hunt for sport, but for balance. Across campus, rumors were already spiraling. Aaron hadn't shown up to class, and some students speculated that he had transferred, while others whispered about the blackout. Myra's senses absorbed it all, cataloging names, faces, and behaviors. Patterns emerged in ways most people couldn't even perceive. Every reaction, every nervous glance, every whisper told her something. She didn't need to search for evidence. The evidence found her, willingly, in the cracks of human behavior. By late afternoon, she returned to the library basement. It was empty now, the alarms gone, the mess from last night cleaned up almost entirely by maintenance crews who never questioned why shattered concrete had appeared in a sealed-off hallway. Mira knelt by the crawlspace hatch and examined it carefully. She had moved through that space countless times, but last night had proven it wasn't safe anymore. Someone else was operating in her world, someone who understood systems, surveillance, and control. That was new. That was dangerous. And dangerous was interesting. Her mind flashed back to Aaron. The way he had scrambled, the way he had tried to wield the gun even though he had no idea what he was up against. He was reckless, inexperienced, impulsive, and yet capable. If trained, he could be an asset, but he would also be a liability. She would have to decide whether he could be molded or whether he needed to be eliminated. Decisions like that weren't taken lightly. The wrong choice could unravel everything. She left the basement through a different service exit this time, moving swiftly but quietly through the hallways, feeling the vibrations in the floor, the subtle echoes of human presence around her. Mira was aware of everything. The creak of a door down the corridor, the flutter of a curtain in an empty classroom, the faint hum of electronics left on overnight. She felt safe, but she knew that safety was temporary. Every predator leaves traces, and every hunter leaves warnings. She had received one last night, and she intended to trace it to its source. Outside, the campus appeared ordinary. Students hurried to classes, bikes rattled down paved paths, and the wind carried the distant murmur of conversation. But Myra's eyes were sharp, scanning for anomalies. She noted the security cameras in odd places, the patterns of the students' movement, the guards who lingered too long or glanced too often in a particular direction. All of it told her something, enough to know that someone had been watching, studying, and perhaps waiting. By dusk, she found herself sitting alone on a bench near the central quad. The sky was streaked with crimson and gold, and shadows grew long across the manicured lawns. She watched as students passed by, each unaware that she could, in an instant, know everything about them. Their fears, their secrets, the lies they told themselves to feel safe. Mira did not feel superior or cruel. She felt a responsibility that no one else could bear. People called her quiet, invisible, harmless, but they didn't understand. They weren't meant to. Her phone vibrated. A single message appeared from an unknown number. They know you exist. She froze just long enough to feel the weight of the words. They weren't a threat. Not yet. They were a recognition, a signal that someone else in the network, or perhaps outside of it entirely, was aware of her presence. The message carried no indication of location, no timestamp, no signature, and yet contained more information than any warning could. It confirmed that her world was about to expand. Someone else had stepped into the game. Mira smiled faintly, the first genuine expression she had allowed herself in months. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it held a promise. Recognition wasn't weakness. It was the beginning of the hunt. And the hunt was what she lived for. As the sun sank below the horizon, shadows swallowed the campus. Mira walked through them, deliberate, unhurried, invisible and unstoppable. She wasn't just a student anymore. She wasn't merely the quiet girl who never spoke and never drew attention.